Okay, the simulation is done now. It took around about 1 hour, and the only thing I changed is that I forgot to activate the collision in Suzanne Animated, so I had to redo it. But anyway, it's done now, so let's have a look at it. You see, I love the way how it starts from a small place and then it gradually spreads across everywhere. So that is to do with the texture map we applied to it. As I mentioned previously, you can use your own texture maps, whatever you want, okay? Alright, it's starting to slow down a little bit. This is one thing that I don't know how to do with Blender, really. You know, with Houdini you can do a flipbook, but with Blender I think I did it on the first one. But anyway, doesn't matter. Right, I'm gonna move on. So I'm gonna select a frame which is 120, which is the end of the sim really, and I'm gonna use this frame to render or create shader for this now. Okay, so first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and shut this wind down because we don't need it anymore. We've got the simulation done, and I'm gonna move to shading part. If I click on smoke domain and press numpad 0, I'm going to lock it to the camera, and it's currently sitting at here, which is material viewport shading. I don't want that. I'm going to switch it to that. Let me just make sure. Render engine should be cycles, device should be GPU. Okay, because I have a reasonable GPU, so why not use it? Alright, good. Now Blender has created this principal volume for us. Okay, I'm going to keep it at that, and I'm going to start adding stuff in here. So let's bring in an attribute because we know there is temperature, and I'm going to connect that to emission strength. No, not emission strength. This color to emission color, and increase the emission strength to 100. You're still not seeing anything because there's not. Let me put temperature in here first. Yeah, there you go. So that's something coming through. That's good. I'm gonna add a color ramp. Yeah. And usually I like to add a map range here, so we can map the incoming range. So that's good. So let me color this ramp already. Okay, I already have the colors set up, so I'm just gonna punch in those values. Okay, so this one I want it sitting at 0.04. I'm gonna click on it here and click the plus sign, and it'll create a pointer in between these two. This one's going to be at 0.4, and the color is going to be 0.218, 0.097, and 0.022. Okay, slightly darker red. And I'm going to create another one, and this one will be sitting at 0.795, and color for this is 1, 0.3, and 0.1. Okay, good. And the next one, again, I'm going to click here. This one is going to be sitting at 0.95, and the color for this is 1, red, green is 0.413, and blue is 0.1. Okay, and finally, I don't like any whites in here. Change that one, 0.95 again. I don't like whites, so this color is going to be red is 1, this is 0.6, and blue is 0.1. Okay, something like that. What I would also like to do is after this, I'd like to put in a math node, a vector math here, and multiply this with a value. This one I'm just going to put in a 10, 10, and 10 for now. So for example, if I were to bring this down, you can't really see very well. Let me see if I can bring these down. Okay, if I drop this, you'll see that the color changes here, which is pretty cool, I think. Anyway, I'm going to leave them at 10. And if I now adjust this range here, let's say 10, and this is minus 0.1. Yeah, you're starting to see you're seeing it's starting to shape up, okay? And this is 1.1. Maybe I'll push this up. Oops, too much. There you go, it's 0.5. Okay, so I like it. I know it's not that much right now, but it's gonna be okay. What I want to do now is I want to copy these three and paste them down here. And I'm going to create a parallel line which will then be mixed before being fed into emission color. Okay, so I'm going to put in another math node, vector math here, and I'm going to multiply that with this. Okay, good. And I'm going to connect the factor into here because the factor is what we are going to convert into color. I should have actually changed it to factor earlier, but anyway, I'm doing it now. So there you go. So when both of these are now mixed together and multiplied, fed into emission, that's what you're going to get. All right, that's looking pretty good. But what I want to do is, instead of these two going into their own color ramps, I actually want to multiply them. So I'm going to put in a math node here and another math node here and connect that one to here also and multiply them together. Okay, yeah, you won't see much happening right now, but it's going to be alright. I'm going to change the range of this one now, 0 to 16 and 2 to 8. So now if you adjust this, let's say 0.2 or 0.1, you'll see that. And I want to tighten it up a little bit. Okay, so maybe you can use 0.25, but I like 0.5. And it's the same here. If you push it up from minus 0.1 to 0, it starts to do that. Okay, so if you choose to minus 0.2, you'll lose everything. So minus 0.1 is perfect, and in between that is also good. So minus 0.05, yeah, something like that. But trust me, this setting works really well at the end. Okay, and I also want to change this color ramp here. Okay, actually this one. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's the same. Right, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. I'm going to keep that. Change the position though to 0.4, and I'm going to change the color to 0.5, 0.3, and 0.2. Okay, so, and I'm going to bring this value down to 8, 8, and 8. Okay, perfect. So that looks decent enough. I'm just going to select these two and mute these, and you can see the difference. If you connect these without the multiplication here, you won't get the intensity. At the same time, without these, it'll look different. Okay, so, and if I were to disconnect that, it's going to look different to this one. Also will look different. Okay, so all of this makes a huge difference at the end anyway. Okay, good. So there's one more thing. I want to bring this density down. I don't want any density here. As you can see, it cleaned up everything around it. Okay, I'm going to add density later on separately. Okay, what I also want to do though is we have this black body intensity and temperature. We don't want this here. Okay, and I'm gonna bring in a separate principal volume and mix it here, So let me make a copy of this, and emission strength will be 0. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a mix shader here, mix shader, and connect that to here. All right, that looks good. And now I'm going to increase the temperature to 1200 because I know that that's what really worked. And if you'll notice that once I increase the black body intensity, you'll start to see that show up. You see? That's what I wanted. All right. So I'm going to keep it at 0.25. A subtle effect. Just a subtle effect. That's good enough. Okay, perfect. I've still got a density of 0 here. Okay. And what I also want to do is this factor. I want to connect that factor from this one here. Okay, so if I pull this up, let's connect that to the factor. So you can see it's still there. Oops. It's still there, but very little. Okay, so if I increase it, you'll start to see there. There you go. You can see. Okay, so 100, 0.25. Okay. But if you don't want that, that's fine. It's up to you. You can either put in a math node here with a minimum value. Like you can have a minimum of like 0.1 here if you want, or 0.05 just to show it up, or you can change it to multiply and increase this value. And you can see all of that matters. It changes how your shader looks. Okay, so I'm gonna not do that. Okay, but you can have it if you want. All right, I'm gonna leave it at that. That is looking good. Or you can just disconnect it and keep it like that. Okay, but I'm happy with this at the moment. Okay. So I'm going to bring in density now. Okay, so let's move on to density. I'm going to bring in an attribute, and we will call this density. Okay, and I'm going to make a copy of this again, and I'm going to bring in temperature, which is the same as this one, but I just wanted to make a new connection here. Okay. Okay, looks good. As usual, I'll put in a math node here. Sorry, map range node. And factor to value, unclamp, and copy the same over here, factor to value. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to bring in something called, I'm going to bring in a math node, but I'm going to this time use something called power. Okay, what does power do? Power actually tightens the bright areas and reduces the light areas. Okay, bright and dark areas, basically it tightens it up. So for example, the bright area is all the way up here, so when you use power, it brings it down to here and it brightens it up even more. Okay, it's like the gamma. Okay, in compositing. I don't know if you used that before, but anyway, that's what that is. Okay, good. Where do I want to connect this? I actually want to use it in the first principal volume, so I'm gonna just make some space here. Oops, no, I don't want to do that. I'm gonna make some space here, and let me make this bigger. Okay, and push this out of the way and connect this. Let me pull this up. It's getting harder to connect. Value to density. Okay, that's where I want it. All right, good. It's now sitting at an exponent value of 0.5. I want to go over 1, so I'll just change it to 1.2. Let me bring this down again so we can see better. There you go. Okay, but what I want to do though is, this is not enough because there's probably not enough density, so I'm going to put another math node and have a multiplication factor to it. So when I put 0, you're not going to see much, but when I increase this to like 40, you're going to start to see things come up. So that's pretty good. That pretty much looks like, if I disconnect this and if I enable this, that pretty much looks like that. Okay, so maybe you can just use that. It's up to you, but you know, like let's say if I put in a 4 here, that looks pretty good as well. But I'm not going to use that. I'm going to show you, I mean obviously you can, but I'll show you this as well. Okay, so I'm going to connect, oops, this is starting to be painful now. Okay, so connect that to density. Good. And I want to multiply that with temperature. Okay, that's why I brought in temperature. As usual, I'll actually just bring these two down here, and I want to copy both of these because I want to have a separate multiplier for my temperature, and the power for temperature will be 4. Okay, and now let's multiply these using a math node. Connect and change it to multiply. And connect that there, and suddenly it disappeared. That's because this value is 40. I want to change it back to 1. Okay, so now you can see things got a little messed up, but that's all right. Okay, that's fine. So let's see how we can fix that. So if I now were to reduce this to 2, yeah, it's, if I put it to 1, you can see it's getting back to how it was before. Okay, sort of, anyway. Oh no, oh yeah. Okay, so I'm going to push this up a little. Okay, that's looking good. And let's see if I can increase this to 4 over here. This is the temperature for fire. So that also is a little too much. About 2.5. Okay, put it back to 2. Put back to 4. And let's kill this. Okay. Okay, I'm going to change these input ranges now. That's not very good. Okay. Yeah, so if I were to change this to 5 and this to 5, for example, that's not. Okay, I'm just going to pull this down, all right, to 1. Okay, so that looks good for now. Okay. Oops. Okay, that is fine. So again, as I mentioned before, you can use it, or you can just use this one straight away. So for example, if I disconnect this and enable it, you're gonna see this. All right, so maybe we should try it with this one and we'll see how it goes. I don't know, I'm not entirely happy with how this appears here. I mean, this looks nice, but I'm not sure what's happening here. Okay, let me put the other stuff in, like background and whatnot, and material, give these a material. Okay, for now, that's our shader done for fire. Okay, Okay, so let's move on to Suzanne main. For Suzanne main, I'm going to choose new. If it works, there you go. So all I want to do is this. Just increase it metallic to 1 and bring the roughness down to 0.25. Okay, that's all. So I'm going to rename this to Suzanne. And for Suzanne animated, I'm going to use the same. Come on. Okay, that is good. So next thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a mesh and go to front view if I can. Okay, let me go to that and actually change this. Alright, good. I set the front view. Oh, it's here. Okay. And push this down. I'm creating a ground plane in effect. Okay. So if I go to 0, scale it up. Okay, and S again, but in the X direction. Oops. That way. Okay, that's good. And also, I'm going to go into edit mode. Go to, I figured out I can use this to select the edges. So I gotta press that one, press E to extrude in the Z direction and push it up. And now put it back to camera. Okay, so that's kind of nicely fitting around the camera. That's perfect. I don't like the sharp edge, so I don't know how to do loops. You know, so I'm just gonna go ahead and use subdivision surface. Yeah, this is I'm not sure how to do it, so let me get rid of that for now, and maybe I'll grab this up further. Okay, get out of edit mode and enable this now. Okay, looks like I still need more of it. So again, sorry about this. I'm not that familiar with these things in Blender. So okay, I think that should do it. Yeah, I think that's okay. All right, good. And I'm gonna make it 6, not in the view, but in the view 2, and render to go to 6. Okay, so yeah, something like that. That looks decent, I think. How about if I render 60, frame number 60? Okay, just to make it faster. All right. Now if I render, no, go into shading. Now if I hit render, yeah, it's gotten very dark, as you can see. So that's the plane. I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to delete that. I'm going to bring in glossy and connect that. I'm not going to go fancy, and that's all I need. Okay, that's all I'm going to use. All right. One last thing I want to do is go into world, and I'm going to bring in my own environment texture. Okay, so environment texture. Please note you don't have to do this, but if you want to do this, you must have converted environment HDRs converted to ACES color space. I'll leave a link in the description to download a software that does it for you. It costs you €2, and it's called as Pyro Converter, I think. Okay, right. So you don't need to do this, by the way, if you don't want to. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and choose that, and I'll come back. Okay, so there it is. I've chosen one of the HDRs from hdrhaven.com, which is for free. I'm just going to put in a hue saturation here and bring the factor down to 0.1. I'm going to increase the value to 2 and hue to 0. Okay. I don't know if that made a difference. Let's see. Okay, it originally did. I'm not sure. When I originally did this, I did it in 2.93.0. Now I'm doing it in 2.93.1. Things appear to be slightly different. Okay, but doesn't matter. It looks good enough. Brightness and contrast. I'm going to push this down a little bit. Say -1. Contrast is -0.8. Yeah, that's what I wanted. Sort of. I mean, these bands you're seeing are because of the planes thingy here. Okay, so if I were to change this, there you go, it seems much smoother. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that. That's not bad, I guess. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Alright, perfect. I'm done with the world now. I'm also done with the object here. Right, so I think that's us ready to render, really. So the next step is to go through the render settings to optimize it, because if I just render one frame here, for example, I'm going to render 120 just to see how long it takes, but I know it's going to take a while. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and render this one frame and I'll come back. Okay, so the rendering is done now. You can see it took 2 minutes and 16 seconds. That is actually pretty good without optimizing it, before optimization. And the fire itself does not look bad, does it? It's actually looking decent, I think. Alright, in the next chapter, we will look at optimizing it and maybe work on the shader a little bit more, okay?